Welcome to a more just and merciful world. I'm Kathy Humphrey, and it is my honor to serve as the president of Carlow University. On this podcast, we talk to leaders, teachers, artists, and scientists from around the globe to explore how to bring more justice and mercy in our own worlds. Today, I have the privilege and the honor to be with Vincent Rougeau. I met Vincent at the Association of Catholic College and University conference, and I am so thrilled that you chose to be with us today. Welcome, Vincent.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Great, and I am so thrilled about this conversation. But before we begin, I was, of course, looking at your bio and kind of going through your life a little bit, and I realized that you and I have traveled many of the same paths.
Oh, wow.
We were born about the same time.
Mhm.
We graduated from college. I graduated in 84. You graduated in 85. We were born during the civil rights, after the civil rights, after affirmative action. Really, we've been a part of that the entire time in our careers. And I'm wondering how much of our past, and I think about how my past has landed me in the spot that I am, and how much do you think your past has to do with your commitment to this notion of a more just world, of an inclusive education? I believe that I read about that you're trying to establish at Holy Cross.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with it. And I think, the era in which you and I came of age is really kind of singular in the history of this country. We both experienced as children the benefits of work that our parents and their peers were involved in to bring this country into a full recognition of its stated values around including all people in the promises of freedom and justice that our founding documents proclaim. But you and I also both know that no one handed that to us or to our families. We had to work for it, and we came out of a period of exclusion and marginalization to do that. So, being really, at least in my family, like the first generation of people who were not educated as children in segregated institutions, who, had certain privileges and freedoms for the first time, it was hard not to understand that and to see how important that was to shaping the person that I am today and to shaping my view of justice and my views around fairness and what we owe everyone in our society. So I've always had that at the center of my thinking when I'm doing the work that I do, because, I think once you have lived through that kind of experience,
Right.
it shapes you.
Really, and it has a lot to do with the fact that we're sitting in these chairs. I mean, did you ever think in 1985 that you'd be sitting in that chair?
Absolutely not.
And how do you think, what had to move out of the way for you to sit in that chair, and how can we move things out of the way so that we make sure we're not the last people who look like us that sit in these chairs?
Yeah, I think it was a couple of things. I mean, I felt that I had been very privileged. I got a wonderful education at some fine institutions, and I knew I had options. But I think one of the first things that had to move out of the way is, how do I use my education in a way that doesn't just focus on what I want and what I need, which of course is okay, and it's right to do that to some extent. But I think, to go back to your first question, raised the way I was raised, I felt like, well, I also have some obligations to broader communities beyond myself. And so how can I combine those two things, using my own gifts and talents in a way that's authentic to me, but then also applying those gifts and talents to things where there is need, where I can be useful, where I can be helpful, where I can help keep change moving. And so I guess some of my own personal ego had to get out of the way. I had to ask myself,
Mm,
am I making choices that really do that?
mm,
And my fear, right? I mean, can
mhm,
I actually be the person that leads that institution or teaches that class,
mm.
that stands in that place and does that work? And so, as you move through your experiences in life, you start to see that, yes, yes, I can do that.
And who helped you deal with that fear that so many times people who are different have to manage, right? Am I good enough?
Right.
Who helped you?
Well, so many people, obviously, my parents were huge influences on giving me the confidence and the strength to make my choices and to feel liberated to make the best choices, but also that as models for making what I would say are good choices. Um, but as I often tell my students, I've told them through my whole career, people close to you often see things about you that you can't see in yourself. They know you sometimes in ways you don't know yourself. So it was good friends, mentors, family, who all contributed, I think, to giving me the confidence and, the sense of self-awareness that I needed to do that. So I think it's really, really important that you're enmeshed in a community of individuals who care for you and see you and help empower you and shape you, and that you listen to them
Yes.
from time to time.
Yes, but okay, Vince, but you're the first Black man to run Holy Cross. Who do you think you are?
Well, I was
How
also
in
the
the
first Black man to be the dean of Boston College Law School. So
yes,
that's,
what gives you that kind of courage to say, I can do that when nobody else has?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think you and I were also blessed coming of age in a time when many others were taking on the mantle of being the first,
Mhm,
from, small institutions, local community institutions to the president of the United States
mhm,
in Barack Obama. I mean, we saw people taking on that responsibility of leadership and succeeding. And so I think, through each stage of my career, I realized I can do this. I realize that I have the skills and the talents to do this, and I can do it well, that I can compete with anybody else who wants the role or who is involved in the role, and that, I had something to share. I had
mhm,
something to bring to this, because I think diversity in leadership is so incredibly important
mhm,
in a diverse society where people are coming from all different kinds of backgrounds, and you cannot simply see, one group of people dominating all leadership positions. I mean, when we are able to take on leadership, we bring a very different set of perspectives to the role that I think adds a lot to what we're able to accomplish in these roles. Others do as well, but I mean, I think the fact that we take the leap, as it were, and say, you know what,
mhm,
the time is now for me to take this on and to try,
mhm.
has really had an impact on these institutions and how they're moving forward.
Absolutely. In your presentation at the conference, you talked about your topic was seeing God in others, and you talked about the necessity for Catholic universities to drive the diverse agenda on college campuses in order that we might create this more just society. Talk to us a little bit about how are you doing that at Holy Cross, and are you reaping any fruit from that work?
Yeah, it's not easy work, but I think we're having some success here at Holy Cross by, first of all, recognizing that our institution, well, going back to its founding, our institution uh, came into being to serve the marginalized.
Mm-hmm,
At the time, it was marginalized Irish Catholic immigrants, in a place in Massachusetts, a state that, where they were burning down convents to keep, the Catholics from, assuming any meaningful role in society. And I think part of the work we're doing here is to remind ourselves of that history and the waves that followed, how we always made a place for those in need, and those who were living at the margins for whatever reason, because of our Catholic faith, because of who we were. and who we are as a Catholic institution. So the first thing I think we have to understand is that work does not stop. There are always going to be new communities for whom access to higher education is a challenge, but also a great opportunity. And we have seen in the history of our own institution, when you give people that opportunity, when you open up that opportunity, look what they can accomplish. Look at the benefits to the society and to all kinds of communities that are reaped when we look for the talent in all people. It's the way that you build a great society and the way that we live out truly the values that we see God in all people. So I think from that foundation, it's a lot easier to have a conversation in our community about how do we reach out to those for whom a Holy Cross education will be, a life-changing experience, and not just for them and just for us, but for the community. And we know that there are many communities where there are young people who would benefit from this education, and we have to go out and seek them. We can't expect them to come to us. So we've done that outreach work, and we've seen a real increase in our applications and a real diversity in those applications, which I think is creating a real excitement here because we are creating opportunities across all kinds of communities to experience what we know Holy Cross can offer and that we're really proud of and proud to share it.
So step one, you have to go and get them.
Exactly.
They're not just going to show up at your door, right? Everybody right now is so worried about this demographic cliff. Another likeness that we have is that Carlo was created to do the same, to assist those who would not ordinarily have the opportunity to gain an education. And so this one first step is going to get them. And I think that's an important step because oftentimes these students don't have anybody behind them moving them towards a higher education. And now we have all of this rhetoric about you don't need a college education. And the reality for me is without that education, I would not be sitting here. And so I worry a little bit about this rhetoric about, especially for all students of color and women. I worry a little bit about this rhetoric that you don't need a college education, because what will that do to us later as far as creating this more just and more diverse world? Because you have to have some level of influence in order to change the world.
I'm with you 100%. I mean, I think, particularly young people of color are particularly ill-served by that rhetoric, which, I think when you look at the history, we know that opportunities do not get handed to you. You must be as good or better as the group that you're competing for that opportunity with. And, without a college education, that's one less tool you have in your toolkit to be competitive for job. It may not be the first job, and this is where I get very, very agitated sometimes. I mean, we are not educating young people for their first job.
That's
we
right.
are educating them for a lifetime.
That's right.
And those opportunities are built on skills, life skills that we nurture in our institutions. And if you don't get them, if you don't have an opportunity to spend these 4 years, shaping your communication skills, your writing skills, maturing, yeah, you might get a first job, but will you get promoted? When the job changes, will you have the skills to be able to change with it?
Right.
Those are the kinds of things that a great college education provides.
What's so interesting, because some of the very people that I hear spewing this rhetoric, they're still sending their children to college.
Absolutely right.
So it is an interesting situation that we find ourselves in around that kind of language and what it will do to people of color in the future if they buy into it. Let me go back to, so step one is you have to go get them.
Right.
What's step two? How do we create a more diverse and more just university, college campus. So that's step one. Without
Right.
them, you don't have it, right?
Yeah, and a big mistake that people make after step one is to think the work is done. So you're right to ask about the next steps, because you bring these students to your community, and then what? You leave them to figure it out on their
Right.
own? That's not going to work. Step two is really making sure that you cultivate the conditions within your community where everyone feels that they are truly a meaningful and valued member of that community,
Mhm.
and that the tools are available to them for success. I mean, you can't reach out to new communities and expect that the things you've always done for a different set of students that you've had in the past are going to necessarily work to help those students succeed. Some of them may, but you can't assume that. So you have to really think carefully about what kinds of conditions do we need to create on our campuses where people really feel that
Yes.
they are valued, they're seen, and that their voices matter.
Mhm.
And that typically involves some changes.
Yeah.
That typically involves rethinking. I mean, one of the easy examples I often give is, most most institutions of higher education in this country, when you think of how, like a liberal arts college like mine in Massachusetts, it's set up with kind of an assumption about how, a typical middle class family lives, when people take vacations, the fact that they take vacations, um, you know, how they get to places, what they do with their free time, what they want to do uh, uh, during school in terms of clubs, all of those
Yeah.
things. None of that is wrong. But when you're bringing in students, Pell eligible students, when you're bringing in immigrant students, who have very different life experiences, who can't imagine being able to go home at spring break, and certainly not
Yes.
to some beach town,
Mhm.
how do you give them the care they need so that they feel that despite that, this community cares for them and embraces them? So that takes work, and that takes a sense of introspection on the part of the community about some of our assumptions about who we are and how we do things.
Mhm. You know, I often say we bring students to university campuses from everywhere, small towns, large cities, farms, urban areas, and then we dump them all in these residence halls from everywhere. And we say, okay, now live harmoniously, right?
Right.
And that's just not real, right? If we don't work with them, then we're not going to create a better world for them, because what they will tend to do, I am thinking about that book that Beverly Tatum wrote about why are all the Black kids sitting with themselves and in the dining halls,
Right.
because if we don't create another environment, what you're saying is important. It's number two. How are we cultivating an environment where people become real people to each other? Right. And I recall you telling a story at the conference about your roommates and how different you all were. And that difference, because of that difference, a lot of barriers were broke down immediately for you all because of the relationships you were able to form as people.
Right.
Right? You were able to move past the differences of the roommates that you had. That must have been a crowded room. There was four of you, if I remember.
Well, it was a suite. We had
Oh,
two
it was a
rooms.
suite. Okay, I thought that was.
Yeah, that would have been a crowded room. Four of us.
But
Yeah.
and even when you think about that, you were beginning that. That's a precursor really to our work in many ways, right? Because it is at that point that you begin to learn about how are we going to be able to live together, the four of us who are so different, but so human,
Right.
right? And um, so valuable even to one another, and how valuable that lesson is. And that is a part of how I think we can do exactly what you're saying, cultivate the environment, um, and create it in a way where our students are learning at the same time on skills that they will use for a lifetime. So when you created this notion of inclusive work, an
Mhm.
inclusive community, What were you thinking that you would leave as a legacy to Holy Cross? How's Holy Cross going to be different when you leave? I mean, maybe you're not going anywhere forever.
Well,
We also
someday.
started our presidencies at the same time. We are truly brothers and sisters here.
Yeah.
But what will you leave?
Yeah, well, I came to this institution because I valued its history, its traditions, its strengths, the wonderful education that's provided, and the almost 200 years that it has endured, and provided this Jesuit Catholic liberal arts education. I guess my legacy, my hope would be to see that legacy, or to see that history expand and evolve to include the ever-changing, you know, complexion of this society, because our society is constantly changing. New people are coming, and new challenges confront us, and I want to ensure that we give everyone in this society who wants what we have to offer as a Jesuit Catholic liberal arts college an opportunity to come to us, to be formed by us, and to share in community with us across the kinds of differences that you just noted tend to be relatively superficial. But for this society, this democracy to succeed, and I guess that's the other legacy I hope to leave, I believe uh, in my heart of hearts that the American project is a good and valuable project if it is true to its founding principles. And that means that there is no one version of who an American is. We embrace a set of values, and we embrace a shared, history and a shared space across a lot of differences that other countries find unmanageable. And we are doing something very important in the world, and we're doing something very important as a Catholic institution to demonstrate our belief in the inherent dignity of all human beings, that we can bring human beings across difference to this place, educate them, and have them all feel that Holy Cross belongs to them, and that will shape them for the rest of their lives, and that they can always call on one another as they move through their lives. To see more people and a more diverse set of people take advantage of that wonderful opportunity and that beautiful, tradition, to me would be a great legacy for my time here, so that when I go out into the world, I'll see Holy Cross students of many different backgrounds, but who are all sharing in the same mission, all shaped by the same values, and all, feeling connected to one another in the same way that I had described to you with my roommates. I mean, I think there was an intention there, because the future of the country depends on those relationships being built across difference. And we see what happens when people retreat to their tribes.
Vincent, do you think we'll ever get there?
I can only hope and pray that we will continue to move in the right direction. I don't know if we'll ever get to the ultimate place, but I think if we're
hopefully before we see Jesus, we like
right, exactly, right. But we've made a lot of progress in this country, despite a lot of failures.
Yes.
And I think if we can continue to resist the temptation to kind of create a pretend narrative about who we are and where this country has been, we will strengthen it. The more we try to retreat into a false narrative, the worse off we'll be. But I think there's a lot, and I have a lot of respect for our young people, who I think are pushing us in a good direction to move forward. So I want to give them all the help that I can.
Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough for this conversation. It gave me an opportunity to just reflect on, we are going to make it. I do believe we're making a difference every day because of the work that we insist on doing. And you're right, although the world sometimes around us seems to be moving in the wrong direction, I think if you and I and others who are listening insist on us moving forward, we will move forward.
We have to insist on hope.
That's right. So thank you so much for being with me today, Vincent. I look forward to seeing you again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye now.
Bye now.